guys, Comic Boom here to review Venom the movie. I just went to this movie on opening night last night. I thought I'd just review it this morning. And I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised. This only had like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 92% approval rating, at least by audiences so far. And well, while maybe a lot of people haven't seen it so far, I'm going to recommend this movie. This is actually a really surprisingly good movie. This movie was better. I enjoyed this movie more than Thor Ragnarok. I enjoyed it more than Justice League. I enjoyed it more than Spider-Man Homecoming. I enjoyed it more than Deadpool 2. This was actually a really good movie. Sony's done a good job here. Now, maybe I'll end up being an outlier here. Maybe a lot of you guys will disagree with me, but I gotta tell you, this movie, which was directed by Ruben Fleischer, it's a PG-13 rating, guys, but don't let that fool you. They're just sort of pushing the edge of the PG-13, and I think they really played that right, because there's a lot of people in the audience, in the theater audience when I went, and everyone was laughing and having a good time. So this is a fun movie. It stars Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy stars, of course, as Eddie Brock. He's the lead. He's the lead character, and in the movie, Eddie Brock is a reporter. But because Sony couldn't use the exact continuity of the Marvel Universe, he's a reporter for not the Daily Bugle but the Daily Globe. His girlfriend's played by Michelle Williams, and her name in the movie is Anne Weying, and she's gorgeous in this movie, just gorgeous. The rapport between Michelle Williams and Tom Hardy, I think, actually makes this movie quite enjoyable. I'll get to more than that in a few moments. The villain's played by Riz Ahmed. He's the in the movie, he plays the character by the name of Carlton Drake, and he is the president of the Life Foundation, which is almost like a Google type character. He does a really good job in this role, and there's a number of other people that round out the cast that I don't really need to go into, but I will as I explain as I go on to give my review. A couple of things that I really liked about this movie. First, I got to say that the story itself. This is just a sit back and relax movie. It's very easy, very straightforward. A lot of it is sort of implied in the trailers. In terms of there's not much to know about Venom. Those of us who collect comic books, we love Venom. We know the background. We know that basically Venom is a symbiote. He's a parasite. He sort of links to a human host, and if you find the right human host and you got a perfect symbiosis there, Venom has a lot of extraordinary powers, much like Spider-Man. But don't be fooled. This movie stands out. Venom has his own unique power set in a way that just really makes this movie stand out. The first out of the most this is obviously a movie with 3 acts in it. The first act is all set up. It's a little bit slow. It drags a little bit in the first act. But I tell you, once Eddie and the Venom symbiote sort of become one in that symbiosis, the action starts, and it really doesn't stop. And when it does stop, it's always for humorous moments or fun. The dialogue here is really good. This is a good popcorn fun movie. And the way that the story is set up, it's so straightforward, and it doesn't drag. There's no part of this movie that really drags significantly, that it really bothers you. This movie it's paced relatively well. As I said, drags just a little bit in the first act, but nothing I don't think that's going to bother you. And what I like is the general story. You know, Tom Hardy plays Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock's a reporter for the Daily Globe. He's a fairly popular reporter. He's fairly good at what he does. At least he appears to be a character that has the respect of other reporters in the movie. And unfortunately for him, he ends up, his girlfriend, played by Michelle Williams, her name is Anne in the movie. She's a lawyer. And Eddie Brock is asked to interview Carlton Drake, who is the president of the Life Foundation. And Carlton Drake is he comes across like a really nice guy. He's really friendly with children, and he's young looking, and he's played by Riz Ahmed. So he's a good looking young entrepreneur, and he's exploring space, and Of course, what the general public doesn't know is that he's found these symbiotes in the outer reaches of space, and of course they're back on Earth and they're doing experiments on them, and it's getting to the point where he's using human hosts to experiment with trying to merge human hosts with the symbiotes, various symbiotes, and of course you can imagine that that's somewhat disastrous. And through the course of the movie, you see as Eddie Brock tries to get to the bottom and try to get that big story, he's basically ostracized by Carlton, and he loses his livelihood. He's fired from the Daily Globe, and he loses his girlfriend, so he's down in his out in his luck. And of course, you got a whistleblower in the Life Foundation run by Carlton Drake, who asks Eddie Brock, you know, your suspicions are right. Come, I'll sneak you into the lab, and you can do what you can take pictures, do what you got to do. And as he does that, of course, he ends up coming into contact with ultimately the Venom symbiote, and that's where the movie really takes off. What is the funniest moments in the movie is the voice of Venom, because he sounds like this. Eddie, let me help you, Eddie. That's probably a poor imitation, but but that's the way the voice in Eddie Brock's head sounds like, and it's Venom. And Venom likes Eddie because, in Venom's own words, "You're kind of a loser like me on my planet." I mean, I can't do it justice, but as stupid sounding as the Venom voice actually is, as it's talking to Eddie Brock in his head, it really kind of grows on you throughout the movie, because Venom, on Venom's home planet, he's just an average symbiote, and he feels like a loser and an outcast in his own planet, so he kind of likes being on Earth. And as you come into the other villain symbiote, which is known as Riot, those of you who collect the comic books, there's different symbiotes. There's Riot, there's Scream, there's Carnage, there's a few other ones. But I could only count 4 symbiotes in this movie. I think there was only 4 canisters. And so the symbiotes in this movie are basically Venom and Riot, and you see Scream. And as far as Carnage, do you see Carnage? Well, you actually don't see Carnage. You do not see Carnage in this movie. But you get a hint of it at the end, and I think that's been spoilered in various spoiler things already. But in any event, the fact that the way they interplay this, the way that they have the symbiotes sort of going from host to host, trying to find the right fit, jumping from human to human, as Riot goes, as the movie progresses, they do such a good job. I mean, I got to give credit to the director here, Ruben Fleischer. He does a really good job of, as the movie's progressing and Eddie Brock is slowly trying to get the lead on the story and his life, he hits rock bottom, and as he becomes as he merges with Venom, you can see Riot, the symbiote Riot, going from human host to human host, trying to fight the right fit, until ultimately he, somewhat of a cliche, but he ends up merging with the person, what's his name, Carlton Drake of the Life Foundation. Somewhat cliche, but it makes for great drama. And of course, when you have Riot, then it's basically Riot versus Venom, which is another way of saying Eddie Brock versus Carlton Drake. Really well done. Rounding out the supporting cast, Michelle Williams' boyfriend is played by a man, Reed Scott. He plays Dr. Dan Lewis. And he's actually like the new boyfriend after Michelle Williams' character Anne breaks up with Eddie. He's all depressed, and she ends up seeing this doctor. And this guy's actually a good guy. For once, they didn't do that trope of having the new boyfriend being a jerk. This actually is a pretty good guy, and he actually helps Eddie. And of course, that's sort of the way that a good plot device in order to have a doctor, because they all end up using an MRI machine to basically at one point separate Eddie from Venom. And as those of us who are comic book readers know, that high intensity sound, sonic blasts, and fire are what Venom and what symbiotes don't like. And just a really well drawn, a really well crafted plot here, very well done. Now, for those of us who collect the comic books and are big fans of Donny Cates' Venom, there's no appearance of any God Null here or anything like that. But we do know that there is a Venom planet. There's a symbiote planet, a planet with symbiotes on it. And sort of part of the plot device in this movie is Riot has this plan to basically go back to his planet to get more symbiotes to come back to basically take over, and have take over the Earth because they have all these hosts on the planet Earth, right? And Venom doesn't want that to happen because he's a loser on his own planet. He kind of likes the idea of being the only symbiote on Earth. So that's why he sort of betrays Riot. I mean, it's so good. I mean, Venom's just kind of an a-hole. A little bit like Eddie. A little bit more. If Eddie Brock is kind of a little bit of a jerk, Venom is kind of an asshole. Pardon my language. But it's really well done. And Venom's always trying to push the envelope with Eddie, you know. At one point in the movie, Eddie's afraid of heights, and so and Venom's saying, well, let me handle it if you're afraid of heights. But no, Eddie insists on taking the elevator, and in his voice, Venom says, pussy. calls him a pussy. I mean, you gotta watch the movie. The humor is, it works. At least it worked for me. I enjoyed this movie. This was a lot of fun. The action scenes were really great. There was when Eddie Brock first becomes Venom, and he's escaping the lab, and there's this huge chase scene in downtown. I'm not even sure what city they're in. Is it Boston or whatever? Anyways, it's an awesome chase scene, and the way that they do Venom's powers, the fight scenes are unique. They're very well choreographed, very well done. I was very impressed. I also enjoyed Venom's propensity to eat people, which Eddie Brock says, you can't eat anybody you want. Don't eat people. Don't eat good people. Again, Eddie Brock in many ways acts exactly like any of us would. I mean, it's such a crazy subject matter, as often these comic book movies are. But this is a really fun adrenaline rush movie, at least half of the first act. And it's just fun. You guys are gonna, I just can't imagine anybody not enjoying this movie. I really don't understand the 30% Rotten Tomatoes rating. I'm not sure what people were expecting going to this movie. I was expecting a bad movie with bad special effects and the whole works, but this is a fun movie. It's well acted. Tom Hardy does a great job, and Michelle Williams does a fantastic job. There's rapport between the two of them. Michelle Williams even has a moment to shine as a she-Venom herself, which is pretty cool. And this was just a fun movie. And you know what? I'm be curious to know people who didn't like it, why they didn't like it. I thought it was really well done. If I was going to nitpick it, it might have dragged a little bit in the first act. There is, if I'm really nitpicking, all this talk about Carnage appearing, is Woody Harrelson Carnage? Is he going to appear? Well, Carnage does not appear in this movie. Okay, he does not appear in this movie. However, Woody Harrelson does appear at the end, stay for the end credits, and there's a conversation that ensues, and I'm not really spoiling much here, guys. Let's just say that this movie doesn't take itself too seriously, but it takes itself serious enough to make it a movie that I think deserves a sequel, and is certainly better than a lot of the other things out there. And hats off and congratulations to Sony for putting out a really good movie here. I gotta say, all in all, and the PG-13 rating, I think, was a really good idea. There could have been some more graphic violence because Venom does eat people, but the way they did it, because he's always so liquidy and venomy, they could cover up a lot of the excessive violence, and they did so very brilliantly with the special effects. They made the right call in this movie. They put this together well. Hats off to Sony. And guys, check out Venom. Out of 10, I'd have to give this a solid 7.5 out of 10. And guys, until next time, check me out on Twitter, hit the subscribe button, and Comic Boom out.